I mean, when you do think of leadership, you think of someone standing up in front of someone being loud, someone being boisterous, someone taking charge. And for me, that's not always the role I feel comfortable in, but I also feel like I can still lead with different skills that I have.
What am I talking about? Okay. This episode of Ladies Who Lead is brought to you by our friends at Dream Realm Pictures, the magic makers behind the camera. Realtor friends, you already know it's listing season and first impressions sell homes. Whether you need a stunning listing video, a builder highlight reel, or want to make your next realtor event feel like a red carpet premiere, Dream Realm Pictures brings you your vision to life with style, strategy, and that cinematic sparkle. We trust Dream Realm Pictures with our stories, and you can trust them with yours. Visit dreamrealmpictures.com and tell them the Ladies Who Lead sent you. Ta-da.
What did I say?
Not loud.
Just leading.
Yep. Okay. Welcome back to Ladies Who Lead. This is episode 4. I'm Alex.
And I'm Meryl.
And today's episode is Meryl's brainchild, and I'm excited about it. What is it?
Not loud, just leading. We're going to start today with a little quiz. I already took the quiz, so I am so curious how you're going to score on this quiz. It's not hard. Just answer honestly, which I know you always will. I just started reading this book. It's called Quiet by Susan Cain, and it's about introverts living in a loud world. This is true or false. I prefer one-on-one conversations to group activities. True. I often prefer to express myself in writing.
True.
I enjoy solitude.
No.
I seem to care less than my peers about wealth, fame, and status. We're going to say no. I dislike small talk, but I enjoy talking in depth about topics that matter to me.
False.
I'm not a big risk taker.
False.
I enjoy work that allows me to dive in with few interruptions.
False.
I like to celebrate birthdays on a small scale with only 1 or 2 close friends or family members. People describe me as soft-spoken or mellow.
False.
I prefer not to show or discuss my work with others until it's finished.
False.
I dislike conflict.
False.
I do my best work on my own.
False.
I tend to think before I speak.
I want to say true.
Is that the honest answer?
No.
Okay. Moving on. I feel drained after being out and about, even if I enjoyed myself.
No.
I often let calls go through to voicemail.
No.
If I had to choose, I prefer a weekend with absolutely nothing to do, opposed to many things scheduled.
No.
I don't enjoy multitasking.
False.
I can concentrate easily.
False.
And in classroom situations, I prefer lectures to seminars.
I don't think I know the difference. Is it seminars you talk back and forth?
I think lectures is more listening. Seminars is like actually working together. And
I like seminar.
Okay. So that would be false.
That felt like an ADHD test.
So you got 2 trues. And this is not, there's no right or wrong answers.
Okay.
So you got 2. I want to know, how many do you think I answered to that were true?
How many questions were there?
There were a total of 20 questions. So out of those, you said true to 2 of them.
I think you probably did 12.
You know me with 13.
Okay. 13. I like that. That was fun.
It's not based on science. So the more you answer true, the more introverted you are.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about today.
Okay.
And it shows it right there. If you know us at all. You have 2 trues and I have 13. So
okay, I
big
like
difference
it.
on
that was
those.
a good.
So today we're going to explore the world of quiet leadership. And I think it's something that's important. And I'm here to advocate for all the quiet leaders out there, because while in society, I feel like we tend to see leadership as real outspoken, energizing, there's a whole different way to lead, and it's quietly.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to, I know we're doing it together, but I'm looking forward to learning, because this is definitely not my my wheelhouse. I don't think anyone's ever called me quiet at all. And if they have called me quiet, they're usually asking if there's something wrong.
Are you okay? You're too quiet.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well,
But there's something to learn
and
from
as
it.
we talk about it, it's not to put one down or the other. It's
Yeah.
just to learn from each other and learn from the strengths and the weaknesses and how we can improve on both
I
ends.
think that they're right in wanting to advocate for it because there's so many examples of out there, outspoken, extroverted leadership. That's kind of the main one that ever gets seen. So I'm glad that's not the only way. And if anything, I've learned the most from other leaders that are around me that are not loud.
Right. You can still be impactful without being loud.
Yep.
So from an introvert, well, I don't think I'm completely
Yeah.
introverted. It's not to put labels like that.
Yeah.
But I want to know what you think are some qualities that quiet leaders bring to the table.
I feel like you hear more and that whenever you do speak that people listen a little. They're a little more ready or alert to what are you going to say because you're not constantly saying something. I feel like I'm a little easier to tune out because I'm always
It's
saying
easy.
something. I think that I may make it hard for them to tune me out, but then in general, it depends on who you ask. If we're talking about my kids or my husband, then yes, they tune me out the second they hear my voice start.
One thing that I've learned, and I've had to do a lot of reflecting on myself of what kind of leader I want to be, because I mean, when you do think of leadership, you think of someone standing up in front of someone being loud, someone being boisterous, someone taking charge. And for me, that's not always the role I feel comfortable in. But I also feel like I can still lead with different skills that I have. And some of those being is I feel like I can listen to solve a problem and really hear people. I think people who are quiet leaders have a deep emotional connection to things and really have empathy for what they're listening to and can make decisions based on really thinking things out and taking the time to do so and thinking before they speak. And this isn't to say that there's one way to it or another way. This is just to say that strategies can work on both sides.
Yeah. People will look at one type of leader and think, well, if I can't do that, then I probably can't, get into that kind of role or something like that. There was somebody succeeded me in a role and that we could not be more different personality wise and approach wise. And that she initially saw how I did that job and thought, well, I can't do that because I'm not, like chatting with everybody out there, talkative like Alex, but that she just had her own approach to it. And so once she got to own, there's not only one way to do it and that her way is equally, if not more effective than mine was. There's power in that, So I think knowing that you don't have to pick, I want to be in leadership, so I have to learn how to be loud. I have to learn how to.
Right. And that's uncomfortable for someone like me saying, if you want to be a leader, you have to do it that way, when that's not where I feel most comfortable in a leading position. And I know when you joined me on council, that was something I also reflected on, was you have the louder leadership style, talk more and speak up right away. And I could try to compete with that, but why would I?
Right.
That's not who I am at all. So I really reflected and dug into, well, who am I as a leader and what is my style? And I think it's important and to embrace that.
Yeah.
The strengths that you have.
And because if you're not living within your natural strengths, you're going to be kind of faking something anyway.
You still have to be authentic to yourself.
So it's good to find your balance, find what you're going to do.
And that's what we always talk about, is finding the balance.
We'll see if we can get through one episode without talking about balance. I don't think we can.
We're like at each end of the spectrum trying to find balance for each other.
Yep.
Okay, so Rosa Parks. When you think about Rosa Parks, I mean, we've all heard the story and the events that took place all through school. What do you think?
I mean, she kicked off, pretty major parts of the civil rights movement.
But we talk about that, and we know that she refused to give up her seat on the bus. And at that time, that was not legal. And she risked her job. She risked being arrested. She risked all of these things. But something that we don't really talk about is what type of leader she was. It wasn't a loud stance. It was a very quiet stance that she did that moved mountains, really. So she is a prime example of someone who was a quiet leader. So when Rosa Parks was asked about her moment that she did where she refused to give up her seat, she was just tired of giving in, is what she said. But her convictions and her power started long before that moment. She was consistent in her beliefs. She was in emotional control, and just said no.
Yeah.
And it was quiet, it was respectful, and it started a whole movement. And she never, from what I've read, she never sought fame or credit for what she did, but boy, did that change things.
Yeah. And that she didn't set out that day to start a revolution or do anything like that. She was just being true to who she was.
Exactly.
And
she was standing up for what she believed in.
And I think that if she had been, because there were plenty of people really vocally standing up.
Mm-hmm.
There were plenty of people who were protesting, kind of arguing, but that her approach is the thing that changed a direction. And it doesn't mean that it's the only way that was right, but that her approach to that exact situation gave her a voice that other people who were being much louder didn't get to have.
And I really didn't realize this until I started reading and digging into it more, because if you search up like what it means to be a quiet leader, her name comes up over and over again, describing her as that. And I found that so interesting because she's loud in the history books. Like we hear it. And the movement she caused was incredible, but it was done so with grace. It was done so with respect, and it was done so with such commitment to what she truly believed in.
So, Meryl, you did some research, and I'm going to read what it says some of the strengths of introverts are.
Okay.
And I like getting to read this because I feel like I kind of take it for granted that I'm strong, introverts are not. And I know that sounds ugly to say it out loud.
I like that you need to say this out loud. I like that you're going to say it out loud.
Yeah, that because it's not true, but it is like, well, I'm the right way. This is the wrong way. So let's see what it says.
Okay.
I
can't wait to hear it.
Okay. Decision making driven by insight, not impulse.
I would say for me, that's 100% true.
I like that.
Like, yeah, we know I'm not going to just make a decision in a split second, even though sometimes I think I should be able to. I'm going to plan it out, think it out, research it. You know that about me.
Yeah.
I would agree with that for sure.
And I think I usually could do impulse first, and then maybe I can find some insight once I blurt out the wrong one.
Bloop, and then retract.
Bloop. Yes, exactly. Okay, so this says empathy and listening as some of the strengths for introverts.
I like to think so.
Yeah, I agree.
I think I'm a good listener.
That's one of the things.
And not just like listening to hear, but listening to understand, and not being ready to just solve a problem. But sometimes people just want to be heard too.
That's one of the things that I feel like I kind of model up from you, that I'll try to, especially, and it happens most of the time if we're in a council meeting, because I'll go to press my button to unmute, and then I'm like, just take a beat, and I try to pause and just listen for a second. It doesn't always work.
I've always felt like you get so much information if you just listen. Like walking into a room with a bunch of conversations going on, I've learned so much about people that way. Probably stuff they don't want me to know, because you can just watch what they're saying. You can hear what they're saying and put it all together, and it's out there.
Okay. So here's one that I like, and I want to hear more from you about it.
Okay.
So this says empowering teams and groups and leading from behind.
I agree with that. I think one of my biggest attributes is getting people involved, and it's not in maybe a loud way. In my neighborhood, I've encouraged so many people to get involved on our boards and our commissions in Northlake. And I just feel like the more people you have involved, the better it is. Like everyone has something to contribute, and your community is better when you do it that way.
Do you feel like it's easier for people to be empowered when they don't feel like they have to be like compete for spotlight?
I think so. I think when people realize that there is a place for you, and you don't have to compete for it. You can be who you want to be.
Yeah.
But I feel like I definitely try to lead from behind, encourage and cheerlead, and like, yes, you can do this, because ultimately with all those people involved, it's just better for our community.
Consistency over charisma. Trust is built over time.
Yes.
I don't know.
Why are you laughing?
I think that is probably true, but that I'm like, I kind of lead with charisma.
Yeah.
And hope that the consistency and trust follows.
And it was kind of the opposite.
So
like what I don't have in charisma, I hope I can make up for in trust and consistency. And actually, that's one of the things that I was concerned about when we moved here, is I was so rooted in our community and work and just school and sports and everything before we left that people knew my reputation. I knew what I meant to people and people knew where I stood on things. And here, having to build that all over again is something that was important because I do feel like over time, if you are consistent and people trust you, it is a way to lead.
I probably experience it in a different order, and that now it makes
so that
so
might
much
be
more
true,
sense.
But it's just a different order.
Yeah, because now it makes so much sense. So I kind of go with charisma and all that stuff, and that some people will start to be like, kind of doubt if it's real or if I'm legit or anything like that. Like they don't really know what to think about it.
If they don't, or maybe if they don't know you well.
Yeah, and so then once they talk to me, they're like, oh, okay.
That is you.
That is you.
Yeah.
But that it takes some time. So you kind of start with consistency and trust, and then once they know you, you're full of charisma. So that's a
I don't know about that.
You are.
Hopefully the others kind of work together.
They work together.
Way. Well, all right. I didn't just research the introverts. I also looked at the extroverts. So, and again, this isn't to put labels. It's just there's, a spectrum.
We'll see about this. Because I'm like a certified extrovert.
All right. So, some strengths. I'm not going to label you, but I'm just saying energizer and motivators. What do you think?
Accurate.
100%.
I have people, I have...
You're like a cheerleader that follows people around.
I'll have people who... I just had somebody say... When I am in a bad mood, I will flip over to your Facebook because you will say something dumb or funny and it'll make me laugh.
All right. So next one, skilled networkers and communicators.
I usually say that I am a super connector.
You are a master connector. You are a master networker. You are a master communicator. Which I think have a way with words that is just spectacular. Your way with people, I think, is just amazing.
I just love people. Which I think I think that some people are extroverts for different reasons or different sources. And that I'm also kind of a nerd for all the different like personality testing and tools, but that there are different types of extroverts and that the kind that I am is like a people collector. I love people. I love.
Well, and you're always making those connections too for people. Those that won't speak out as much. It's like, here, you're going to talk to this person. You're going to talk to this person.
Yep. Which I do. Yeah. That's a thing that I've practiced. Because I used to go into a party or kind of a group setting and be the Alex show, right? That I would talk, fill up all the empty space. And then I realized there are people in the periphery who want to be involved. They just don't know how to break in because I'm talking the whole time.
Loud.
Yeah. And so I try to now be pretty cognizant of what's happening around me. Are you trying to talk? Have you met everybody? That kind of thing.
Well, for what it's worth, I think you're really good at it.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. I try.
All right. Next one. Fast-paced and dynamic.
I agree. 1,000%.
Oh, you're all over the place.
We talked about that. I'm always like, this is the plan. This is what we're doing. Have you met? Let's do this. So that's not always a good thing, but I'll take that one.
Okay. Too. All right. So we're pretty accurate on what
so
we've
far.
been talking.
Yeah.
Oh, so
only because I'm peeking down the list. Let's see.
Public facing and performative.
So I read this on the notes
when I put
and I was
down,
like, no.
I purposely left it there.
So performative is a thing that I have been accused of and that I kind of get, but that I hate it. Because the thing that I want people to get from me always is like authenticity. I want them to know that this person that you're getting is real. Like whether you see me at council, you see me at my house, you see me in the neighborhood, at the grocery store, on a bad day, on a good day, that you're getting the same person. But that I think the performative thing that comes up whenever you look it up is because sometimes people use extroversion as a cover for insecurity. And that's when it becomes performative.
True. And you touched on that and where people thought like, are you really like this all the time? Yes, you really are. This is your authentic self. Like you're not trying to sell anyone anything. This is who you are.
And I just had an experience with this actually over the weekend because we had like some stuff come up in the community and that I had someone reach out, well-intentioned, but they were a little hot and heavy. They came in and that I think that this person was expecting a fight back or something like that. And that what she got was, I definitely am sorry that you feel that way. Let me tell you the truth about what's going on. I never know what I'm doing. So if I made it seem like I was overconfident in what I was doing, I don't know most of the time. And that
Well,
she
that
was
is just me.
yeah. And that this person was kind of like taken aback because they're used to seeing my kind of big personality. So they expected that I was going to come back and I'm like, well, I know better. I am better. And instead I was like, girl, I don't know. Like, let's talk
Right. And
about
if
it.
anyone knows you
Yeah.
personally, they know you're not like that.
Right.
But I could understand how the perception of that,
Yeah.
if they don't know you, that it comes across that way.
And
But
so
it takes 5 minutes of spending time with Alex to know she's the
Right.
real deal.
Yeah. Which it actually turned into a really fruitful conversation. And I think I made a friend
Oh, good.
from something that started off a little hot because I was like, whoa, Nelly, I don't know. Talk to me.
That's because you're such a good communicator.
Hopefully. I try.
Okay.
You're reading a pretty cool book that you already introduced to us. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the book and what drew you to the book, what drew you to this episode, and kind of where's your head at?
Yeah. Well, just the title itself, Quiet, and it talks about introverts in a very loud world.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like even just growing up, that's so much of what I was. I was just like naturally more quiet. That's just who I was. I was always an observer, a listener. I think some people thought maybe I was shy. It wasn't that I was afraid, and I'm still not afraid to talk or anything like that. I'm not shy. I just more comfortable listening, observing, and taking it all in. And being in public office, you all often think of the opposite. And even in teaching, I'm talking all day, I'm teaching all day. It's very different than who I am as a person. So trying to understand how am I still me and stay true to my authentic self in a leadership position?
Yeah.
Like, does it work? Is it okay? Am I good enough to be in a leadership position because this is how I choose to lead? So for me, reading the book that I've started is really about finding kind of my way and just like reaffirming that, yes, you can be a leader in a completely different way. And this book touches on how America through the decades have kind of put out there that being an extrovert, an extroverted leader is the best way and is the only way. There's so many self-help books on how to win people over, how to talk, how to do this, how to do this, where people feel like they have to fit that mold.
Yeah.
And it's not always true.
Which is so interesting that you say that because I agree that that's what the perception is. Okay. So as you were talking about that, I was thinking, because I agree with you that America has the perception of you're loud and kind of in your face because you're thinking of Gary Vaynerchuk, Joe Rogan, some of those kind of people. But that what I think of with actual leaders that have kind of made a bunch of changes in our country, we have Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, which he's, I guess, a little more out there now. But that these are not super outspoken, loud people. They're quiet, they're thoughtful, inventor minds, and they changed how all of us operate daily.
Yes, but that's not always the popular form of what a leader looks like or what we've been taught
Right.
that a leader looks like. And I read this quote that you don't need a megaphone to move mountains.
Mm-hmm.
So there are different ways to
like
lead.
it.
And I'm not saying that being loud and energized and all the things that extroverts are is wrong either. I think somewhere there, you need to learn to push yourself if you're finding yourself way on one side of the spectrum.
Well, I think that we've talked a little bit before we started about what's innate and what you kind of learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's benefit to knowing where you are, who you are, and what your strength is, and then saying, okay, where do I need to improve? So I have been loud and talkative forever.
That just shocks me.
I know.
I'm shocked. I don't even know what to say.
And that the thing that I had to grow in is how to not just talk all the time, because I had to, recognize that my message, no matter how well spoken I am or anything like that, my message won't get through if people think that I'm talking just to hear myself talk. And so I have to practice pausing and asking questions and taking a breath and letting other people speak. I have to practice that. I have to practice paying attention to people that can't speak up as quickly as I can, because then they never will get to if I'm constantly.
And I feel the other side, because even just doing this podcast, I feel confident about what I'm talking about and I feel confident about who I am. it's still out of my comfort zone to do something like this. You know me on social media. I'm not super loud on social media either.
I have to force her to post cute pictures of us. If she's the owner of a cute picture of us, I'm like, girl, post it on Facebook or I'll go crazy.
Right? If you don't post it, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And I'm just not a believer in that. But at the same time, you got to promote yourself a little bit too. And there's that balance of you got to know when to push yourself. And I've found that I've had to do so if someone is talking too loudly, figuratively or literally speaking too loudly. I got to stand up from it. I got to speak up to be heard sometimes. And so I push myself to do that or to cut someone off when they've been going too long. I have a voice, but sometimes I need a louder voice. And I've gotten more comfortable over the years doing that.
Yeah.
I know it's funny that we both said we talk to our dads about things.
Yeah.
And it's also something right now just with my boys that we tried to teach them is like, be humble, let your actions speak, but also don't get run over.
Yeah.
And also know when you have to be an advocate for yourself and speak up and be a louder leader than what you are. We spend a lot of time telling them your actions speak louder, but sometimes you can just get overlooked. You got to do a little self-promotion.
Well, and you also have to consider, so there's a thing that said you have to know the rules of the game before you can play it.
So true.
It's not just, okay, you're either an introvert or you're an extrovert, and that is what it is.
No.
You have to know what is it that I want to accomplish? What space do I want to compete in? And how will I best fit into that? So it doesn't mean that I have to pick, okay, I'm an extrovert, so I can only do extroverted things.
Right. You can't listen, Alex, because you're an extrovert. You can't have empathy. You can't have empathy. No, we're not trying to put anyone into a box.
That it's finding what is it that you want to do. So I know that my strength is meeting people, talking. I can start the conversation, but that the thing that I needed to get into a position in the community and in a role of leadership was being able to hear people, hear their perceptions, hear their perspective. What are they worried about? And so I couldn't have gotten to the place that I am in our community by just talking, by just
have to listen.
You have to listen.
Right.
And so finding the balance of how will you use your innate strengths to get to the place that you want to get to in whatever way. And so I wanted to be an advocate for my community. You can't advocate by just talking. You have to listen. You have to learn. And so I had to take things from you and from our previous mayor on how you absorb things, how you process things. Our town manager is another one that I kind of learned this from too.
Oh, wealth of knowledge right there.
And that kind of balancing sure, I have things to say. I have stuff that I want to get across, but that it's not the only way. Also, I can turn people off of wanting to speak up and in a way that you don't, because I've seen this happen and I try to reel it back in myself where people feel like they can't speak up because they don't have as much to say, but that what they have to say is really valuable. And so I try to be cognizant and make space for that. But that's where a personality like yours and a leadership style like yours is really beneficial.
Right. I'm over on the other end of the spectrum. Same thing. Like you can't do what we're doing if you're just listening the whole time and not talking. And I do feel like I have a lot to offer our community, and I love being involved in education and a lot of different things. I have experiences I'd like to share with people, the knowledge I'd like to share. I can't do that by not coming out and sharing it.
Right.
I can't do that just by listening all the time. Sometimes the difference between people that make it or people that are doing it is they're just doing it and you need to put it out there. I want to go back to when I was talking to my dad about this.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know before we've talked about how we both talk to our dads about things. And my dad was a professional flat track racer for Yamaha when he was younger. And we talk about the boys in their sports and how to promote themselves. And one thing that my dad said recently when we were having these conversations that really stuck with me is my dad was very well known racer. I mean, we go places now and people still know him from his racing, really cool. His racing days. Very cool. But one thing he said, he was talking about a racer that he raced with who went on to be very, very famous and had huge success. And he said the difference is he had a manager and he sold himself more than my dad. My dad was just as talented, but he was still successful, but didn't quite find the success that the other guy did because of just self-promotion.
Yeah.
So I think in a world where you don't really want to be on one end of the spectrum or the other, it's like, how do you find balance in that? I know that's that word we talk about a lot, but it's true. And where do you find the courage and the push to make your way somewhere more in the middle on this case?
So you said something earlier about stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that we can probably encourage our listeners to do is figure out what is your comfort zone. It's more comfortable for me to be meeting new people. It's more comfortable for you. So like identifying what is your comfort zone and when do you need to step out of it? Because you don't have to always make yourself uncomfortable to be successful in a situation.
Yeah, but there are times that you really want to, so
Yeah,
you don't miss
figuring out like
opportunities.
when do you need to stretch and when are you making yourself too safe?
And that's situational, I really think. And it comes down to what's important to you. Like, what do you want to get out of it?
Yep.
So I know when I feel like I need that extra little push, I surround myself by people who give me that extra little push to get out of my comfort zone, whether it's colleagues at work or Alex.
Yeah.
There's always that, or even my husband will push me sometimes, like post that, do that. And it's silly, but something as simple as posting on social media more is coming out of my comfort zone, or sharing things. Like, I don't want to come across as bragging or I had this, but at the same time,
you see me post all day.
I sometimes miss out on it. Like, Alex did that. I'm like, I did too.
Yeah.
I just didn't post it.
Well, I don't remember if Meryl wasn't there because she didn't take a picture.
And I forget that people, like, I enjoy seeing what everyone's doing. And I forget that people probably enjoy seeing what we're up to too. And it's not braggy.
And it's not like, so I will say, I think that how you do anything is based on your intention. And so if I was going to promote myself so that people just know me and love me, they do. But if I was going to promote myself just so that people kind of know me and love me and it's all about me, then the intention would be different. I try to come from a place of, I want people to feel empowered. I want them to maybe have a laugh. I want them to feel comfortable. I want them to feel included. And so I try to use that as my driver for stuff that I'm doing, whether it's posting on social media, talking at a meeting, anything like that.
What's crazy is we want the same thing. Mm-hmm. Like, what you've said is exactly what I try to do too. It's just a different approach.
Yeah.
And knowing when you got to get out of your comfort zone and give yourself a little push.
Yep. And so we talked on our last episode, and you just brought it up again, about surrounding yourself with a good group of people and that knowing who you can go to. So if you know that you need a little kick in the pants before you're about to go into an event, that you need some confidence, you are going to need to be out of your shell. I need to take advantage of this opportunity, and I need to really get out of my shell before I go into this meeting or whatever it is. That call your friend that will give you that kick in the pants, because I am that friend for a lot of my friends that will call and say.
And you have to be honest with yourself when you do that. You can't call someone who you know what their answer is going to be, and that's the answer you're looking for.
Right.
You have to be real and be like, this is what I need right now. And I think it's really some self-reflection and looking at what is it that you want out of the situation? What is it that you want out of public service or whatever job you're working or whatever you're trying to achieve? And who do you go to help push you to make that happen?
One of the things that I hope that we also talk about, or that we encourage people to do with each episode, is look at yourself, think about, how am I approaching the stuff that I do every day? How am I approaching my conversations with other people? How am I approaching my projects at work, the relationships that I have at work, in my home? Because I feel like we do spend a lot of time just bouncing through life, but that if you stop and set an intention for whatever it is that you're doing, that you go in so much more prepared.
You know, I like being prepared. So yeah. I can get behind this.
I like it. And that I would normally say that, I don't have to be over prepared for stuff, but that I really do prepare. I just prepare in a different way. I think about the fact that I will reset my intentions. I always want to be high energy, fun, positive, because that's what makes me feel better getting work done. And so if I am going into the week, like today's Monday, and I feel like I was coming into this week a little sluggish, a little tired, but I noticed yesterday that my energy, my vibe was not right. and that I've already kind of decided to myself that what I'm going to give to the world is energy, positivity, encouragement, you know? And so I was going into the week without the ability to do that. And so I stopped yesterday and reset my intentions, reset my energy, and kind of like change that up because I've decided that this is what I want to give to my family and to my community. And I wasn't able to give it. So I had to stop and reset.
I think that's a really important word that was left off when I was researching and looking at this episode is intention or being intentional. I think that really does help set you up for success, especially if you're trying to push yourself a little bit out of the comfort zone, whether it's talking to people, whether it's speaking up when you normally wouldn't, attending a new church, attending a new school, getting involved. If you think about the intentions, or even if it's small talk, if it's intentional and you're trying to get something out of that and there's a purpose to it, I think it becomes a lot easier to do if you look at it that way.
I also think it takes some of the nerves out. So whenever I can say, okay, this is what, so if we're going to go to an event, I could just be nervous because we're going into a room full of people that I don't know, which that doesn't make me inherently nervous, but it's more like, how's it going to be? All the questions of like, what would it be like?
Well, for me, when I walk in a room like that, I'm like, am I going to have the correct answers? Am I going to know what to say? I feel like I have to prepare for questions, conversations. This person knows this. This person knows this. I got to be ready to answer.
Yeah. And so I set my intention before an event like that. And I go, okay, I want people, if I'm the only person that any of these people talk to today, I want them to feel like comfortable and, you know, like appreciated. I usually say loved. I know it's kind of weird to say that you want strangers to feel loved. I do want people that interact with me to feel loved and valued. I usually try to like a fun way, not in a...
And people don't always remember what you say, but it's how you say it and how you made them feel.
Yeah. And so that's the intention that I set is I want to know if these people only talk to one person, if I'm the only person that talked to them today, because I'm extroverted, because I'm definitely going to say hello, that I want them to feel appreciated and valued and seen. And so there's more than one way to cut a cake. Yeah. And that's where I think the value in what we're talking about today is that I say, okay, I know I'm going to talk to everybody and this is what I want them to get. And that you approach it differently. How would you, when you're preparing yourself to walk into a room full of people and you don't know them or whatever it is, how do you prepare from your kind of perspective?
For me, being prepared to answer questions. I feel like there's questions about being an elected official or being a teacher, being a mom, like those things. I consider the audience or who's there and just mentally be prepared for what's going to come my way. And also, I'm sure introverts around the world have done this where it's like, oh, I should have said that, or I wish I would have said that. I try now to not leave with, I shouldn't have said that. Just say it.
Well, and you have the opposite, which is sometimes when I go home, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. And I said it like 5 times, you know, or whatever. So there's always kind of like a give and take with whatever you're doing.
So again, this wasn't an episode to label anyone. I'm sure everyone can identify more on one side of the spectrum than the other. But I think in this case, a blend, and maybe not just like an even blend where you want to end up right in the middle somewhere, but knowing when to use some skills. And for me, it's leaning in and really speaking up sometimes when I maybe would sit back, but it's that voice that's like, no, you need to say that. Nope, interrupt. Yeah. Nope, add your opinion there. And I can still be true to who I am, but I have to speak up a little bit more, especially in some of the worlds that we speak in and that we live in.
And so this weekend, we're both parenting teens, so I know this is not new to you, but that I went into a conversation with my son and my husband ready to lead the conversation because I had so many thoughts. I had so many things that I wanted to get through to him. I wanted to hammer all these things in that I had thought about examples of my life and, you know, proof to him and all this stuff. And then I realized that isn't really what he needed in that moment. And so I took a step back and I took a different role, a different approach to the whole conversation. So inherently, since I didn't talk the whole time, my husband led the conversation, and that him and my son got to have way more of a fruitful, authentic conversation than if I had come in guns blazing ready to say all the freaking points that I had made.
You want to get some attention in my family is I do the opposite, because usually it's here's my thoughts, but what do you think? Tell me more.
Yeah.
And it's if I come in guns blazing, they're like, whoa,
Mom's serious.
Whoa, we're listening.
So maybe it's like that. Yeah, that's so interesting that the opposite approach yields the same result for each of us.
Right. And that goes back to our intentions in leadership and our intentions of networking and connecting with people. They're pretty much the same, just how we get there. But I think it's beneficial to really push yourself to the other side and do some reflection to see how you can push yourself to get to the other side.
So what can we leave our friends with today?
Taking an opportunity to even just test out a little bit of something. For me, like I said, just social media or striking up a conversation with a stranger, something where there's no consequences.
Yeah.
It's just try it.
Challenge yourself.
Well, I guess I should say that if you're not completely extroverted.
Yeah.
For an extrovert, that's not a problem.
Just challenge yourself in some way. Challenge yourself to stretch and approach something a little bit differently than you normally would. That doesn't mean you have to completely change. It doesn't mean that the way that you normally do it is wrong. But I feel like whenever I do kind of test something out, I try and I stretch a little bit. That's when I really grow. Is what I go,
yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. See if it's a tool that you can use, that you can fit in, and not all the time. You don't have to do it all the time, but maybe it works into what you're trying to achieve, and maybe it'll be beneficial. But I would love to hear from the people who listen if they've struggled with this, if you find yourself not saying enough, if you find yourself saying too much, like where do you fit in? I want to know, and have you experienced anything that we're talking about today? Or examples of quiet leadership.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on Ladies Who Lead. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences with quiet leadership. Have you found yourself speaking up more or learning to listen better? Share your journey with us on social media. Don't forget to follow the podcast and let us know what leadership topics you'd like us to explore next. Until next time, keep leading authentically, whether quietly or boldly.